薄いのアホ。
プリズムフォーメイクアップカードレディー。
Welcome to Shojo Tell, where we discuss shoujo manga and tell who's hot and who's not, talk about themes, and just generally geek out. Today, May 30th, 2021, we'll be shoujo and telling about the series Earthian by Yoon Kouga. I'm your host, Ashley McDonald, and I'm joined by Vrai Kaiser. Hello, Vrai.
Hi, Ashley. Thanks for having me on. Caitlin had nothing but good things to say, and Mercedes also.
Excellent. I was like, Caitlin recently was like, you should have Vrai on. And I'm like, I know. This is my own failing, okay?
Oh. I was gonna say I was surprised that you asked me before D, because she reads a lot more shoujo than I do.
I have so many people I want to have on, and so little time, you know?
I feel that. There is so little time in the day, month, year.
Yeah, life, it's difficult. But Vrai, who are you, for anybody who happens to not know that?
It's so good. Hey, my name is Vrai Kaiser. I freelance a bunch of places, but you may know me best as the managing content editor and contributor at Anime Feminist. Like I said, previous guests, Caitlin Moore and Mercedes Cluiz, are also members of the team. So, and they're good people.
Yeah, so I'll just keep bringing more and more of you on, so it's all good.
It's part of our secret feminist cabal conspiracy.
Yes, it's all a conspiracy. No, I have no ties to anyone. I just go with the flow. I have like ADHD getting guests sometimes. I'm just like, this one, they look cool today. I don't know. That's how I do things. But anyway, so Vrai, when I asked you what series to do, you were like, well, I really love Pet Shop of Horrors, and you already did that. But I also love Earthian, and I was like, cool, let's do Earthian. So, can you explain to the people what Earthian is about?
Yes, I can. I don't know how much you want to get into, like, where it sits in. Maybe a little. I know somebody asked a question about this, so maybe I'm jumping into it ahead of time. But so, Earthian is the first full series by Yoon Kouga, who is best known for her perennially unfinished and extremely dicey work, Loveless. It ran from 1988 to 1994, and it is about a pair of angels who are actually aliens, Chihaya and, oh god, why do I always want to call him Katsu, and that's not correct.
Kagetsuya.
Kagetsuya and Chihaya, who are angels who are sent down to Earth as a pair to count the pluses and minuses of humanity. And basically, if humanity accrues over 10,000 minuses, then the Earth will be destroyed by the angels. And so it starts out as a sort of slice of, not an episodic sort of case of the week type story, if you're familiar with Tokyo Babylon et al., those sort of dramatic bottle episodes. And it eventually becomes this larger thing about the angels' true motives and the fact that our main characters are falling in love, which is, of course, a terrible sin punishable by death.
Of course.
It's full of angst. And it's one of those things that when you hear about it, you're like, oh, well, this sounds like every other thing I read in the 90s. But Earthian actually predates a lot of other stuff, like a lot of Clampworks and Kaoriyuki and a lot of these other things that are dealing with queerness as tragic forbidden love and, you know, Catholicsploitation manga.
Yeah. I definitely, in the beginning at least, thought of it as Pet Shop of Horrors meets NBC's The Good Place.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah. I was like, that's the vibe I'm getting from this. Yeah.
Chihaya meets somebody and has a monologue about how humans are nice, and then something bad and tragic will happen, and that person usually will die. And then we'll have some pensive monologue. This does have a slightly better translation than Pet Shop of Horrors, because it wasn't done by Tokyo Pop, so...
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so, Vrai, why do you like this series so much? Because personally, I had never heard of it until you brought it up. So I am all new and shiny to everything.
No, but that's, I'm sort of impressed by that, because I do like shoujo, but I feel like a lot of the shoujo works I gravitate to are either things I read as a teenager and am kind of nostalgic about, which this definitely falls into, or stuff that is classic, like your Moto Hagio or Takemiya, and those sort of older historic works.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what I like about Earthian is that it really vibes with a lot of just the id of my teenage self. It's, you know, like I mentioned, it's got this Catholicsploitation angle where it's using the kind of loose imagery of angels and Christianity. You know, there's all these gorgeous color images of Chihaya wrapped up in rosaries, which you don't wear. I was raised Catholic, so all of this is very funny to me whenever manga does anything with Christian imagery. And the fact that it's part of that precursor element of kind of the only place you could find queer themes in manga in the 90s and early 2000s was work like this, these very lavish, dramatic shoujo works and the occasional BL that would come over. And I think it's worth noting that the main romance here is a completely consensual one. Like, the actual dramatic sex scene in, I think it's the beginning of volume 3, is really beautifully done. I think it's one of my favorites in shoujo. It's got these gorgeous, striking contrasts of the dark blacks and whites and just the silhouetted figures. And I think, you know, it of course has the problem that a lot of shoujo in this genre has at the time, where it has decided that in talking about queerness, it's just going to lump it in with incest stuff.
Oh yeah.
Which is not great. It's very annoying, in fact. But, you know, you took what you could get at the time. And I just find Yun Koga to be a very interesting manga artist overall. I sometimes call her if Mario Kata had fewer hits, because I think her work doesn't always succeed in what it's going for, but I think it's always got an interesting idea. It always has these very raw moments that she captures. You know, much has been said, deservedly, about the creepy elements of Loveless and the fact that in depicting these characters who are all survivors of childhood sexual assault, it ends up also fetishizing them in the process of being a shoujo manga aimed towards, you know, an outsider audience. But at the same time, we own all of it because my wife really felt powerfully seen by some of the stuff in Sobi's arc and that kind of thing. You know, I think that Akuma no Riddle is a pulpy, you know, assassin Yuri series that I love very much, but it's also poignant in between its assassin, you know, fight of the week stories in how broken some of these children are and how scary the adults are in their life, and yet how determined it is to give them a happy ending at the end of it. And she keeps circling back to these themes of these very raw depictions of traumatized teenagers and adults who have hurt them. And I feel like even when she gets, you know, detoured or bogged down by the desire to do sexy, lurid crap, there's an honesty there at the same time that I think makes her work continually compelling to me. And I think it's also quite justified when people are like, no, but the lurid stuff is still there and it creeps me out and I don't want to wade through that. And I think that's fair.
I definitely, reading it, I was like, I am so into some of these ideas that are happening around, like, what's an Earthian? Like, what does that mean? How is it different than a human? Like, what is a human? What's good and bad? And then it was just like plot threads get dropped or like not really explored, and I was like, okay,
it's so clearly a debut series. Like, the whole first volume is just this mess of jumping around in time and here's a flashback, here's a modern thing. Also, these characters have a bad case of same face because we decided to make our central gimmick that only our one angel character has black hair and everybody else is a broad-shouldered blonde man with various degrees of waviness and length.
Yeah, But then there was like volume 4 or something where Chihaya is not drawn with his black hair all the time, and I was like, is it Chihaya? Like, I was so confused. I don't know who anybody is that's talking right now. It's very confusing to me.
Yeah. At the same time, I will say that, you know, we've been having, as a community, conversations in light of Miura's tragic death, you know, a man heavily influenced by shoujo, may he rest in peace, and how he worked himself into an early grave because the exploitations of the industry. Yun Koga is kind of famously an artist who leaves a lot of abandoned series in her wake, and even in this first series talks about having 2 assistants who work with her and kind of taking long hiatuses on series when she's working on them, and frankly, good for her.
Yeah.
It makes me very happy that she takes that approach to her work. And, you know, she's married and has a kid. And I don't know, she seems like an artist who has, as healthy as you can in this industry, an approach to life-work balance and doing collab stuff. And I don't know, that warms my heart.
Yeah, no, I definitely love finding out when manga artists are like, hello, I've taken breaks and I have a family. And I'm like, oh, good priorities. Thank you. Don't just draw manga for me. I don't want that.
Please, no. Also, I was looking up her bibliography and dates on this, and it never fails to blow my mind that this series, with its very warm and fuzzy happy ending, is kind of before the explosion, the 90s BL explosion. You know, it predates Fake. It ran concurrently to when Clamp started doing some of their happy stuff. I think Rigveda started and ended while Earthian was running, and then they kind of started Tokyo Babylon, not a happy story, even if I love it. But it all, like, this is a story with a happy ending and a consensual romance. 5 years after Gilbert runs out in front of a carriage and, you know, dies tragically, at the same time as that incredibly garbage ending of Banana Fish. It's a big deal to me for when it came out that it put its foot down on having that happy ending.
Yeah, so do you think it's still worth it for people to read it like now in a modern context where we do get more of our happy gays?
I don't know. Like I said, I'm very nostalgic about it, and I think it's interesting if you are somebody who is interested in the history of shoujo. If you're not, I don't know, because outside of the central romance stuff, and I think Kouga really gets herself together as far as actually plotting out the sci-fi story she really wanted to tell and excavating that. But like the weird age play stuff and the incest, and it's a lot, and it's yikesy.
So much yikesy. Yeah.
And I'm willing to let it go for the 80s and because of that nostalgia, but I don't know if a new reader wants to deal with that.
Yeah, no, I definitely had to be like when I got to those parts in it, I was like, okay, it started in 1988. Just remember that. Just keep going.
Just remember, it's very old.
Yeah. We were not cool with the gays. The AIDS was happening. Everybody panic, you know, just like.
I do find myself every time I go back to it wondering how much Yun Koga was consciously doing an HIV/AIDS metaphor. I have to imagine not super consciously, because there's an interview in the back of the physical release that I have where she talks about, you know, I wanted to write a story about somebody, about characters who love somebody so much that they'd be willing to die for it. And I thought, and basically like, what about the gays? I'm like, okay, Yun Koga, you're a very sheltered woman
like,
in the 80s.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Like, but that's literally what was happening.
Yeah, no, also, it's the 80s.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me, I don't know where I was, like, the fact that the you know, it's always that case, right, of, like, genre fiction allows you that extra step of removal to get away with more stuff, the Star Trek principle, in terms of just positive depictions of stuff where nobody's looking because it's girls' comics.
Oh, yeah.
And also, you know, also for a modern viewer, I don't love that this series passes the Bechdel test, but just barely.
Oh, gosh.
Mostly women in this series hate each other or don't talk. It's not great.
I mean, there's what, like 4 main female characters, maybe? Like, max.
Something, yeah, because there's Elvira and there's Miyuki and Lucifel, who's really only a character in the side stories, and Gabriel, who is also mostly an extremely side character, and that's kind of our biggest female characters.
Yeah. I'm like,
and I'm not even sure Lucifel counts as a female character. Like, there's a lot to unpack there.
You're like, yeah, well, Lucifel ended up being, I was like, you might be the most interesting one to me right now, but that's okay, you know.
Lucifel is super interesting, and definitely those side stories are where I'm like, Kaoriyuki, do you need to be writing a check? I did, in fact, read all of Angel Sanctuary as a teenager. This holds up much better than that.
There you go. Yeah, I was trying to explain it to my partner at one time because he's a rabbi. He's like training to be a rabbi. So I was like, okay, religion is happening in this manga, right? Like, I want to get some facts straight. So we're talking about like the archangels and stuff. And then I was trying to explain the relationships between Lucifel and everybody else. And he was like, wait, what? And I was just like, no.
Oh no, this is the purest of aesthetic sprinklings. And I mean, maybe it's just my upbringing, but again, I love when manga does that. It's very funny to me to see it from an outside-in, aestheticized perspective. Like, stuff like Vatican Miracle Examiners or Angel Sanctuary or Evangelion. It just absolute catnip to me. Bring me your Catholicsploitation.
Bring it. Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, okay, before we get too far into spoilery things, I guess I should say that people can read Earthian without having to hunt down the old physical volumes that cost a lot of money. I had trouble. Like, I would have preferred to buy them physically, but they're kind of rare and expensive.
Yeah, I am very lucky that my wife bought them when they came out.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, super lucky. But you can read them digitally in like very select places. Like, normally I read on Kobo, but I had to buy it on Nook this time, and it's like available on like Comixology and Nook, and those were like the 2 places from digital manga publishing. And I don't know if this is just doesn't that explain so much?
It really does.
I know.
So it must have come out in like that same wave as the digital re-release of Mars and Tramps Like Us and such.
Yeah, I'm not sure when they published it, but yeah, it explains so many things about, like, it was not the most pleasing digital reading experience I've had. I'll go with that. But like, I could read it, so like you could read it without breaking your entire bank account. So if you want to read Earthian, you can buy it.
It's something. Probably if you want to read a more recent Kouga series, you might want to go with Akuma no Riddle instead, because it's still weird and messy, but lacks
so much
her
incest?
bigger problems. Yes, no incest at all, actually.
Great. Okay.
Shockingly, and no implicit pedophilia. Well, no, that's not true, but it's off screen and it's supposed to be bad and not sexy.
Great. Oh my goodness. Okay, well,
I said the feelings were complicated.
Just like you and Kouga, yeah. Okay. Well, so now if you haven't read Earthian, you should probably stop here because we're definitely gonna like spoil all the things probably. And if you want to leave something, to enjoy, like surprise wise, like pause and come back. Okay. I guess I wanted to start with something like somewhat easy, maybe, but like,
go for it.
Earthian is a pretty weird title and like concept. And when I said it to my partner, he was like, it sounds so sci-fi-y. And I was like, I think it's more sci-fi-y than you would like expect from the premise of it, I guess.
Yeah. Like we mentioned before, it's, they're angels, but they're aliens. And I have to wonder how much of that was... How much of it was playing to what was popular in the market? How much of it was Kouga figuring out what she actually wanted to do with the series as she went along? Because there definitely they definitely read as angels in the early stories. And then you get to like volume 2 and it's they're actually aliens and they are looking to invade Earth, and the planet they live on is a different planet and not heaven.
Yeah. And they have their ship is called Metatron, which is like the ultimate angel, my boy Enoch from Genesis. And just like, but that ship looks super like sci-fi and stuff, and I was like, what is happening?
It's a very endearing mix of just throw it all at the wall. Let's see what happens.
What happens? I know. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And just like, I think it's weird because, you know, actually 2 of the main characters that we get are like Taki and Miyuki, who are biohumanoid experiments, and those are kind of the closest that we get to humans to being like main characters. So it's like, it's called Earthian, and yet there's no humans who you would expect would be like prime Earthians, right?
Yeah, it's definitely circling around that theme that I think was popular in sci-fi at the time of, you know, characters, alien or mechanical created characters who are more human than humans. It's got that same kind of malaise about it as I think a lot of early Clamp, where we're getting on towards 1999 and there's a lot of early buzz about climate change that these shoujo works are really picking up on and responding to, and this sense of things hurtling towards some kind of catastrophic event, and are people, you know, too cruel and monstrous to go on. And I think a lot of those anxieties come out in these stories in a way that's pretty interesting, because those parts have aged real depressingly well.
Yeah, right. I was like, this is still horrifyingly accurate, and we still talk about this. So that's great.
Yeah. It is very, because actually before I picked up the manga, I saw the OVA first, and it's a very awkward watch because the first 2 episodes are just, you know, early case stuff and something with Taki. And then the last episode just skips to after Kagetsuya and Chihaya have slept together and the invasion is nigh. And it's, what happened? What? I'm very confused.
Almost as confused as I was when Taki was introduced, and I was like, who's this guy? Okay, he name dropped Chihaya at the end of his chapter, and then it goes back in time to when he actually met Chihaya, and I was like, why didn't you just write that one first? I don't understand.
There are definitely manga I enjoy that play well with the whole timeline confusion thing. This is not it. It's just a beginner manga artist figuring out what she wants to do and not really getting it. Especially since,
like, that's okay.
Yeah, like especially since the series ultimately takes place over, you know, 3 or 4 years. It's a pretty constrained timeline, and yet unless you sit down and plot it out, you're like, wow, this is clearly a story of generations because they age so much. No, it's not.
No. Yeah, Taki has an expiration of 3 years or something, so it definitely only takes place over the course of 3 years, and it's like, okay, sure. Totally.
Which then also makes you go, you know, wait, how old was Miyuki and how old is she's wearing a seifuku, so I'm just I don't love this.
I don't love this. I know. I could never tell what age anybody was supposed to be. I was just like, all right, whatever.
And like, if I want to put on my generosity hat, put that on for a second.
Okay.
I think she probably thought she was doing something with the fact that, you know, that Miyuki is like, you know, she's 14 or whatever, and she's been very sheltered, and Taki looks so much older, but he's technically 2 years old. And, you know, the age play elements there, and I'm like, but also, this is creepy, Kouga. This is creepy. And it's so clearly meant to play into the intended audience that's reading this, where most of the girls are teenagers of the presumed age of the readership, who are with these very tall and handsome looking, but emotionally age equivalent guys. And I'm like, but you're still doing the thing. Please.
Yeah. You're like, still no. Like, Having it both ways is always tricky, you know? Tricky.
Yeah, especially the stuff with Elvira and the teenage boy that she picks up, where it's like, well, I hurried to grow up, but also I'm still a child inside, but also I'm taller than you, and also, well, I'm uncomfortable. That's what I know.
I know, Elvira's like, I just aged 6 years in the course of like 3 weeks, and I was like, excuse me. I'm so confused. And then they were like, other angels don't have that power, and I was like, oh, okay. What? You're more confused.
It's because she's a special hybrid who is transcending the old generations.
Yes, she's a special incest hybrid. I'm like, okay.
Okay. Yeah. It just okay.
Okay. I know.
It is, I think, and I think the story is doing it more in service of, the queer elements and what it wants to say about that. But it is very interesting from a Shinzo Abe perspective how much subtext there is about the angels dying out because nobody's boning.
Yeah, no, I was like, wait, isn't this like just what Japan is today? They're so concerned about their birth rate falling. Like, are they blaming homosexuals? That's not it, you know? Like,
well, I mean, the LDP is very much blaming. Yeah, because they're the worst. So you look, looking at modern news stories and then rereading the manga, it's like, oh dear.
I know, I'm like, that's also oddly fitting of today. All right. This panic never goes away. That's great.
I do love that the bad guys of the series, bad guys in loose quotations, since it's one of those series where they come around in the end, kind of are, but the aggressors for our big climactic fight are the two compet characters acting as each other's beards. Like, all right, you Kouga. I vibe with that.
But
like the fact that Raphael and Gabriel are just so absolutely miserable just because they have to pretend to be heterosexual.
Yeah.
My
gosh.
I kind of love that.
You kind of yeah. No, yeah, I was talking to, again, my rabbi partner, and he was like, yeah, usually the archangels, out of them, Michael is the fighty one. And I was like, no, Raphael's the fighty one in this. And he's like, okay, so they based it off of the Ninja Turtles. I was like, I think this is more complicated things going on here for sure. Definitely.
I think the degree to which Yun Kouga based things off of scripture is that she looked up some names in a book and went with it.
Yeah. No, even in the first... The thing that offended me in the first volume was that, they're evaluating, they're like supposed to be there. Kagetsuya is there to be on the plus side or the minus side for humans, being like, humans suck. They suck at everything. Like, they're bad.
He's not.
And Chihaya's like, yeah, and Chihaya's like, no, humans are good. Yay, I love humans. And like, Earthians are great, whatever, But then, like, as a minus point, Kagetsuya had been like, oh, humans are so stupid, like on Earth there's a million different languages and all these different systems. It's so inefficient. And I was like, excuse me, that's because God in the Bible in Genesis, like when we made a tower up to heaven, he was like, no, I can't have the humans like organized like this. That's aggressive. That's like what the Tower of Babel is about. I was like, you can't blame that on humans, like that's your God's problem.
Yeah, I mean, it is fully unintentionally interesting that as an early sign that he and that the system in general is extremely fallible.
Yeah, I was like, wait, what separates the Earthians from the angels too? Like, they don't seem any different.
Wings, extremely aesthetic wings. And
prettiness.
Mystery cancer.
Yes, and mystery cancer. Oh my gosh. But otherwise, I'm like, your systems don't seem very good either. Like, your society seems like a mess,
It's a Ponfar society. They only bone once a year. There's a lot going on.
Oh, yeah. They have to be in heat or whatever. I was like, okay. A new element has appeared. Stop adding things. No, just go with what you already had, okay? Like,
the series really can't decide to what degree it wants to be extremely horny or very Jun Mochizuki, like characters who are passionately but ambiguously having feelings at other people. And it's a very interesting tension.
Yeah. I guess we should step back even further, just like, how do you feel about Kagetsuya and Chihaya, like, as main characters?
I mean, Kagetsuya is he's very good at being the love interest. I really do like Chihaya, though. I think that he is part of this tradition of male leads in sort of BL and BL adjacent works of, you know, the kind of doe-eyed innocent who's entirely too dense to be believed, and, you know, just, gosh, has never thought about what sex or attraction might be. Gosh. So that, you know, you can set up the dynamic of the sexually aware or pining love interest and the very feelings-oriented but quote-unquote pure audience stand-in male protagonist. But I think that as the story goes on and she figures out what she wants to write, he really breaks away from that after the chapter where he's with Elvira on Valhalla, and he realizes that the angels are planning to invade Earth and take it over for themselves. It becomes this very believable kind of catalyst where he becomes a much more active character in a way that is believable from where he was later, but it's a very fulfilling arc to see, and one that I don't think that kind of character gets too often in romances like these, because usually it's just a matter of, you know, their passionate, hot-blooded love interest finally breaks through to them, usually in very assault-coded ways, if not outright assault. But in this case, he's actively catalyzed by realizing that there's something he cares about and wants to do about it, and that naturally leads him to facing up with his feelings, and then to the two of them having a mutual understanding. And it's really good. I really have a lot of feelings about how well that central arc is pulled off once it gets going.
Yeah, for sure. Because definitely, from the first volume, be like, oh my gosh, Kagetsuya is like the only one who does anything really, and like Catalyst, and is aggressive, and like all these things. And then it's like, no.
Right. He's your sort of typical jerk boyfriend type shoujo guy who insults who insults our hero a lot while secretly having the dokis, and it's like, this is tired. And then he ultimately turns out to be this kind of very earnest, sensitive guy in a little bit of a reversal that's nice.
Yeah, we get to see him hate on like everything and everyone, and then it's just like, oh, okay, wait, actually I can just embrace my feelings, you know? And I was like, oh
positive masculinity.
Yeah. What? How we got there? That's amazing.
It's good, actually. It's actually a good romance that's good, which you don't, I think, expect reading the early bits, because again, it looks so formative of stuff that I can't even say that but how much was actively, you know, inspired by this work directly, but stuff that was pulling from similar things in the air at that time. I think it sort of stands out uniquely in that way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, reading the first volume, I was like, this can go nowhere good. And then I'm like, okay, that part went somewhere good, but then everything else, okay. We went places.
A lot of the stuff with the ensemble cast is like, I find Elvira interesting as a character, but also what?
Yeah, I'm like, okay, so yeah, we have like basically 3 different subplots coming together here. I guess like, and then the short stories are their own different plot even, I feel like.
Right, the short stories are, Yunkoka really liked the Archangel characters and wanted to do some more with the Michael Raphael subplot.
Yeah.
And then just decided to make Lucifel trans, but like on accident, and also while implying that maybe they were traumatized by sexual assault or maybe that the fact that they were traumatized by sexual assault influenced who they turned out to be as an adult.
Yeah.
Like,
and I was just like, okay.
Okay. You know what? I really like this character, so we're just gonna nod and keep going.
We're just gonna keep going with it. Yeah.
And also, there's incest.
Yes, because of course there's incest. I was like, really? We're still going with this? Okay.
Yeah. and once again, I said, Kaori Yuki, you need to have Raziel write Yun Koga a check.
Oh gosh. But yeah, so like, I feel like we'll get to that since that's last. But yeah, there's like the Kagetsuya and Chihaya main plot being on Earth, like monitoring people, but like JK, it's all kind of a ruse. I did want to bring up also that like the other funny thing that was overlapping with like Shinzo Abe's current like Japan's current birth rate problem was that they were like, no, the angels can't eliminate all the Earthians and then just like immigrate to Earth. That doesn't solve any problems. And I'm like, yes, immigration debate. Yes, I love that too. Let's throw that in there too.
There's so much subtext going on here. It's kind of impressive.
It's impressive. Yeah. But then yeah, like we have all these chapters that don't involve Chihaya and Kagetsuya with the biohumanoids, and I was always like, what is happening in these chapters? For sure.
And then the stuff with Taki and his inventor that really wants him to murder him is just it kind of just I
was like, what?
Like I get it. He rebukes it and decides that being a human doesn't have to involve intrinsically violence on another person, and that's not what makes a person a human being. And so he reaches his emotional catharsis, and so we're done with that bit. But also, you did just leave this character who's been actively trying to murder you and the people around you for months. We just kind of left that. It's not important now.
Yeah. I was like, what? I was also confused by the definition of humans as they can kill other humans, and I was like, well, yeah, but like animals can kill humans too. Like I was like, I don't see how it's special, but sure.
Yun Koga read about the 3 laws of robotics and wanted to incorporate that into her sci-fi fantasy story.
And that was that.
Yep. And then we just plowed forward with that.
Don't think about it too hard. Yeah. Just like, okay. Yeah. And then we have Elvira. And I was just like, okay, this character is here as well. Like, yes.
Yeah, like, on the one hand, she's so very interesting as kind of the most active female character in the story. You could make an argument for Miyuki, but mostly she...
no, I would say Elvira is definitely doing
the
more
most
than me.
Like... And so, like, I think that is very interesting, and I like her, but also her character at times feels a bit piecemeal in terms of what the individual appearance needs her to do in reference to the other characters and to move the plot along. So in some ways she feels like an inconsistent character.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I feel like her age is, she just looks however she wants to. She has some weird magic power that can do that. So it's like, okay, this character is, whoever Yun Koga needs her to be in a particular situation.
Yeah. And like, sure, it's cool that the, mastermind behind the thing that saves both the entire human race and the angels is this extremely passionate and determined woman, but also the execution is not what it might have been.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And then, so her whole deal is that she like sleeps with her dad, has a baby with him. Like, she already has proven that interbreeding is the way to protect the angels from dying out from the black cancer. Because if they get the cancer, apparently there's like a 99% fatality rate. But she's like immune to it. Or no, they only have half immune. It's like a chance, like 50-50 chance that they're immune to it.
Right.
So she just happened to be immune. And then her kids are definitely immune to it. They're 3/4 human and 1/4 angel.
Yeah, the Saiyan principle.
Yeah. And I was like, this message is fine, but we got here through incest, so I guess it's not fine. You know, like,
the metaphor doesn't really hold.
yeah, like, I'm not sure about this. I want to agree, and yet, you know.
Right. But also, you did grow up because you desperately wanted to bone your hot dad.
Yes, you wanted to bone your dad. Like, I don't know.
I don't
you know? It's just very hard to get behind, you know?
Yep. Yeah, and it's just gives me all the flashbacks to like early 2000s era internet fandom where you had a lot of straight cis women who were in an extreme hurry to equate their queer male ships with their incest ships, and but they are both frowned upon by society, you see, and I'm like, I hate you, I want you to die, and I blame 90s manga.
Yeah, I really don't understand this connection. I'm like, it's very unnecessary.
It feels like the only way, basically, to get queerness into manga at the time was to take it through that lurid angle. I mean, look at Banana Fish, which isn't quite the same, but it does have, you know, where Ash and Eiji's relationship is this extremely pure emotional thing, but we had to make all of the queer men who voice like sexual attraction. Yeah, they're all pedophiles. And then you have that terrible, terrible ending. Because it has to be lurid or pure and sexless, and it has to be tragic. So I feel like in some ways Earthian is working in those constraints, and that's how it got what it has through. But also it ended up twining these things in a way that kind of stuck around for a good decade.
Yeah. Like, oh goodness. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's interesting that it tried to. There's a thing, the sci-fi element too comes through in that, like, sex is shown to be is just like scientific. They're like, that's just something you do to make babies. We all look pretty to attract each other to make babies, right? Like that's the thing. But they're like, but love is unscientific. Like, you can't control that. That's why, like, it becomes this immoral thing where we all like the people we're not supposed to like and stuff. And I was like, okay. Sure.
It's doing some things, but I'm not sure even it knows what those things are half the time.
I'm just like, I like all of the things we're playing with. I really wish we had stuck with them for more than 2 chapters at a time. That would have been really cool. Like, yeah.
No.
That's all I want.
We're figuring it out.
We're figuring it out as we go. I know.
Yeah. There's a long break between that first volume and the other ones, I think, if I remember correctly.
Oh, that would make way more sense.
Yeah. Like, I don't have the exact dates of publication, but just reading her author notes, there was definitely a gap in there somewhere.
Was there also a skip between the main story and then the side stories? Because I felt like the art improved like a lot in the side stories.
So I'm not sure if the side stories were made specifically for the re-release, which is what was with what the physical editions are translations of the 2002 anniversary anniversary printing of the book. And I kind of wonder if they are, you know,
made it like a decade later.
Right. And I will say that is one of the things that I admire about Yoon Kouga is that her art style changes a lot depending on the era in which she's drawing, and also the fact that she's sort of dabbled in just about every genre. You know, she's done shonen, shoujo, josei, all the things. All of them.
Yeah, all of them.
Like, again, it does not always succeed, but she's always trying something new and interesting, which does make it awkward with the side stories, because all of a sudden it's her 2002 art style when she's, you know, getting ready to start on Loveless, I think. And it's really different from the 80s, like, early Clamp era style.
Well, I thought it was still kind of like Clampy to me, but more modern Clamp, where they're like do less prettiness in the eyes and everything, like cleaner but more cutting type of stuff. Yeah, I was like, this is definitely a different art style.
It looks much closer to when she did the character designs for Gundam 00. You can see the same bones of it, but definitely cleaner is, I think, a good way to phrase it.
Yeah. So I guess we should talk about the side stories, and the so much is happening and still all out of order.
Compet is evil, the miniseries, and also incest is there.
Incest is oh my yeah. So again, and trying to explain it to my boyfriend, I was like, okay, so there's Michael, who is the adoptive father of Chihaya. And he has a sister named Lucifer, but like, they bone. And then, like, but Lucifer also likes Lady Gabriel, who is the wife of Raphael, who but wants to bone Michael. And he was just like, like, exactly.
It's extremely melodrama.
I was like, wow, so much is happening. I didn't, I should have expected it, but I was taken off guard that all of them, all the connections, they wanted to bone each other, had so much boning, like,
but all destined towards a, tragedy and miscommunication, of course.
Of course.
I do really enjoy that kind of relationship she builds up between Raphael and Lucifer, and it's very, a high melodrama, courtly rivalry type stuff, but I thought it was compelling to watch. And again, like I mentioned before, I think you've done some mistakes in how you did this, but Lucifer being a very trans-mask type of character was interesting and neat to watch.
Yeah. I like that we were allowed to show like female presenting nipples though, and like no male presenting nipples. It was just like, all right, we're flashing now. I was like, okay.
I'd forgotten that Gabriel and Lucifer actually got together for a little while before she died, and I was like, all right, is this going to be one of those series from this era where we can have heterosexuality and we can have male queerness because we're appealing to our audience base, but female queerness does not exist? And no, she remembered. I'm like, all right, I remembered. You're going to go on to write Yuri that I really like. Carry on, Kouga.
The seeds were here, yeah. It's all good. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I just ended up really liking Lucifer as a character, despite
the incest.
Despite so much. Yeah.
Despite the insults and the kind of pseudo assault.
Like, yeah, I was like,
I mean, a child of rape, basically.
Yeah, but I was just like, it felt like Lucifer was the only one who was like, I know what I want, and I kept it consistent through all, like, 6 chapters or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay. I mean, she wants a lot, but like
it is a tall ask. And it's so very funny to me, those chapters where they're kind of plonked into the loosest version of a high school setting because we need some kind of structure to hold this up, and Kouga hasn't really thought through the differences in culture that much.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I was like, what?
It's very first time writer stuff, and all I can do is go, okay, you're learning, You're growing, I'm rooting for you.
I'm rooting for you. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I mean, I think going back to the initial discussion about like what Earthian means, I thought it was actually very interesting that it was like, okay, yeah, there's like a very generalness about this, right? Like, it's not like humans, it's like anything that lives on Earth or like
right.
is into Earth is an Earthian. And I was like, oh, okay. All right, sure.
The whole idea of the planet and everything that lives on.
Yeah, like the planet shapes them and nothing else.
Which I guess is interesting in the framing of,
so like culture shouldn't matter, yeah,
mm-hmm.
right? Like that's kind of like what I got from that. But I was like, but it does.
It does. It does, in fact, matter.
I was like, you can't like this series called Earthian is again like half of it doesn't even take place on Earth. We're in Eden or like Valhalla or wherever, you know. And yeah, these angels aren't any different than humans. They're going to high school and boning. I don't understand.
But I guess it is about, you know, the characters who are the most emotionally developed and sympathetic are the ones who are drawn to Earth and claim it as their own. So I guess it becomes this beating heart that the story keeps drawing back to, despite all of, you know, it has a very broad takes on, you know, moments. Look, we're visiting all these different cultures, but inside the heart of humanity is the same kind of story.
Yeah.
It's very much that kind of thing.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, they're like, it doesn't matter if we're in the US or the UK or China or like Japan. I'm like, oh yeah, totally.
It's very endearingly humanist of it in this extremely young, optimistic way. So I think she's 55 now, so I think she would have been pretty young when she started writing this.
Yeah, so she must have been like early 20s or something.
Which makes sense. This is, yeah, okay, so she was born in... Yeah, so she would have been 22 or 23, about the same age that Uwatase was when Fushigi Yugi got started. And that tracks so much to me. This is a very early 20s type story. And there, I guess, looking at it through that lens, I see so much like bursting creativity and these kind of broad ideas about love is love and rah that you kind of think about when you're still forming these greater ideas about ethics and the world and progressive ideas. And I don't know, just the heart of it is good to me, in spite of all of this mess and the baggage of the era and the fact that, as far as I know, Yun Koga is a straight woman trying to sort all of this out.
Trying to deal with our modern day problems, globalization, homosexuality.
It's a very sweet-hearted series at the end of the day, and I like that about it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I guess I just kind of assumed she was in her early 20s without actually looking up her age, because in the notes about her assistants, they are also like 22 and 23.
One of them's a metal fan, and that's adorable. I hope that she is still living her best life.
Yeah.
And when she started this, she must have been fresh off of her time doing primarily doujinshi and just so much.
Yeah. Oh goodness. I'm trying to look over the
I have thoroughly decimated your notes. I apologize.
No, it's fine. This always happens. Yeah, but okay, so yeah, in general, listener questions were less questions and more like, I'm so excited, how nostalgic, now I have a reason to reread this and see if I still love it type of comments. And I'm like,
I hope I did right by you, listeners at home. I feel like I was a little all over the place,
please,
but
please tell me if you still love it for sure. But then we did get some questions. I think we did touch on like a bit of these things already, but we'll ask them properly. So from Celestial Rand on Twitter, hooray! I think in regards to questions, do you think Earthian becomes another track of inspiration for later BL adjacent / shoujo works, Angels, Observers of Humans, etc.? And did any of its themes pass on into Yun Koga's later works, Loveless and Akuma no Riddle?
So I guess we did touch on most of this, yeah. For the latter point, definitely, it's very different than her later works in some ways, but there's definitely those early themes about, like, what makes a person and, you know, terrible parental figures and traumatized children who take out their trauma in really unhealthy coping mechanisms through their relationships, but also we want them to be happy, which is pretty much all of her stuff.
Just everything all the time.
All of them.
Great. Very happy. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I don't know a lot about the like BL space. Again, my very basic understanding of it is that it used to be wrapped up into shoujo as Earthian is, but in more modern times is, you know, its own thing and not like necessarily shoujo.
Well, So it's so Shonen Ai, which doesn't get used anymore because it in like the 2000s got some kind of pedophilic associations with it, but that's what still gets termed stuff like Heart of Thomas and Kazutoki no Ura. That was all published as shoujo that just happened to focus on and it focused on romance between boys, usually like school-age boys, usually in European settings. And then there's definitely a 90s BL boom, which is where the shift kind of starts to happen, and then Gravitation is like a mass market mainstream boom that I think really exploded BL as its own subgenre. But I think this was still kind of on the cusp of that, where it was still mostly under the shoujo umbrella. Also, there is at least on grain of salt on Baka Manga, there's a note that the author of The Tyrant Falls in Love notes Yun Koga as a direct influence, and so she does have to apologize to the world for that. Ms. Koga, I will be expecting an apology.
We're gonna add her on Twitter.
I will not. But
yeah, I mean, one of the second questions we got from Anna Lee Licious, I can't say words, on Twitter was what Yun Koga's influence on other works of fiction was. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I am dead curious as to whether Clamp was reading her stuff or whether it's just they just happen to be contemporaneous and they are both drawing from, and whether Yun Koga also was a fan of Devilman, basically.
Yeah. That's all we need.
Because they're definitely playing around in that same pool, I think. Yeah, I have a deep soft spot for Wish. It is a favorite of mine. So, and it's a much fluffier, lighter story, but there's overlap there for sure.
Yeah, oh goodness, Wish.
It's so light and
JoJo's fanfiction.
but like my genderless angel children, I love them.
That's true. Full of genderless angel children. That is true. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because Chihaya always looks like a girl. I'm just gonna say it. Like
yeah, he's very in that mold of like we're making our male character look extremely feminine because he's our female reader insert. So it goes.
Like from the covers, I thought he was a girl, and then I was like, oh no, wait, this is a BL manga. That can't be right. That can't be.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's still counted if BL still counted as a subset of shoujo, or if BL magazines count as their own. I mean, as genre lines break down these days, it's all increasingly an intellectual point anyhow.
Yeah. I only still get mad about it, like, because, if I look at manga podcasts or, like, best-selling manga lists, they're all just going to be shonen and seinen.
Oh, yeah, it's a problem.
And I'm like, I still have to fight this gender war because it's going badly,
So much, I mean, even seinen, unless we're talking about, like, the extremely, extremely action, sex, titty boobs kind of stuff, seinen increasingly feels like the catch-all genre. Feel like that's why
that's true.
I feel like that's why so much of what I enjoy ends up being seinen, just because it's like, does it not fit the specific demographic of the other three? Put it in seinen. Sure, Land of the Lustrous is a seinen. That seems right.
Oh yeah, there are definitely seinens where I'm like, it's not a josei? Oh, all right. I guess.
No, josei will only be for reality set series about women living their women problem lives.
Yes. Having their crises over and over and over.
And Helter Skelter,
right.
Which is the best.
All right, so I guess we should try to close out with, like, are there any... I'm just going to make a very broad question.
Very well.
Are there any ships in this besides Kagetsuya and Chihaya that, like, you like or think are good?
I very much wanted Lucifel and Gabriel to be happy. I love them. They're good and tragic and sad. I find Raphael's such a jerk that I find Raphael and Michael more interesting than, like, compelling, but I did really like Michael as a character, so it's one of those things where, like, for him I want this to work out because I like him and want what makes him happy.
Yeah, to be happy, but you don't necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah. You know the feeling.
Yeah. No, Raphael was definitely like, why are you like I know why you're like this,
But
like,
can you
gosh.
stop?
Yeah, like, can you try a little harder to find something that makes you truly happy? Gosh, that's not, Michael or whatever. He's just not trying.
Yeah, and I can't look. I like all these nice Earth girls, and I want them to be happy, but they've all made terrible decisions.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because they're all children. They're children who are too young to be dating these very tall men.
They're very Okay, I guess I didn't remember Miyagi's name until like halfway through the series when they said it one more time, and I was like, Miyagi, yes, that guy that I can never remember, who's always with Aya, and I'm kind of like, I wish Miyagi would be happy. Like
Miyagi and Aya are a bit sweet in that sort of B couple way. Like she's got that very tsundere princess thing, and I actually think that their epilogue story is my favorite. Just in terms of settling into domestic life, and it's very nice.
Yeah. Oh, very nice. Yes. Yeah, overall, like, they're very superfluous characters who are just there to bring heteronormativity that doesn't suck, I guess. I don't know.
Golf clap. Well, it's there so that we can have an artificial barrier in the early chapters because she's jealous of Chihaya, but
she's jealous of Chihaya. But then it ends up being, the only healthy, like, heteronormativity. And it's like, yeah, that's great.
Good for you, kids. Good for you.
Good for you, kids. You figured it out. You got through them awkward years and you figured it out. That's good. I like it.
Oh, it's a mess. Oh, it's messy.
But yes, Kagetsuya and Chihaya are OTP, obviously. Right?
The feelings, they're real and they're deep.
Yeah, I mean, the series is like a lot. I feel like many essays could be written about it. And, we gave a very somewhat deep but also surface level thing about it right here. That's what this podcast is for. We're just like the touch point into something, I feel.
A jumping point.
Is there... Yeah. Just the starting point here, like, and then you go off on your merry ways. But is there anything else that you wanted to bring up about?
Gosh, I mean, definitely there's more that a person could talk about, but I think we managed to touch at least lightly on about everything, and I hope that I brought people good memories.
Yeah. When's your anime feminist article about it gonna come out?
I'll put it on the list.
Put it on your 1,000 articles.
There's always something.
Yeah, that makes sense. Fine. I just, I'll look for it. Something.
Very well. I will keep it in the back of my mind.
Yes, please do. All right. Well, everybody, thanks for listening to Shojo Tell. Comments, questions, constructive criticism, concerns. Need to gush about your OTP? Please don't make it any incestuous ones. Email shoujoandtell@gmail.com or leave a comment on the episode's YouTube page. We're at Shojo and Tell on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram. Vrai, where can people find you and your work on the internet?
So you can find the work on the site I work for by going to animefeminist.com. You can find me and the freelancing that I do on Twitter at WriterVry, or you can go and check out the podcast I co-host with my partner where we look at sort of trash media, queer media, and also sometimes an extremely skeptical look back at the first CW show Smallville by going to @TrashPod.
Oh, Smallville, that was a time.
Right. Yeah, right now, I think when this episode comes out, we should be doing our Pride Month series, which is where we do 4 episodes, kind of plucking out various instances from the history of queer film and kind of putting them in their context and what this means and what it says about the era of filmmaking at the time. And it's always hard work, but I love them very much.
Yeah, it sounds worthwhile. Totally. Are you excited every time you hear an episode from us? If so, please consider leaving a rating on Apple Podcasts. This will help the podcast reach more hearts, or at least ears. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back next time for Rig Veda or the first third of Hanakimi. It's probably going to be Rig Veda, but you're free to place some bets on that because I'm not good at this stuff. Stay tuned. Until then, bye.
Bye.